Are you here? Okay, then everybody's here in person.
We still have to record it regardless.
That Eric in the elevator, we were equally confused.
You know, happy with you.
And we was coming to order. Good evening. My name is Lorraine Stubb, and I am the chairman of the Berlin Historic District Commission. As indicated in the agenda for this meeting, this is an in-person meeting with remote access by Zoom video and telephone conference. Meeting access was provided and posted on the town website for the commission members, applicants, and other interested persons to participate. For those listening, I would ask that you mute your device or phone if you are able to do so, that we do not get any background noise. When it is time for individuals to speak, I will ask you to unmute your phone to identify yourself. If a number of people ask to speak, we ask that you be patient until your turn. I don't think we have anybody waiting.
No, nobody seems to be online, but I'm not sure, is your speaker on? Can you push this to your microphone on? Okay, so your button has to be pushed to red.
Oh, sorry.
That's okay, that's much better.
Do I need to repeat it?
No.
I have two very important reminders to everyone participating. First, every time you speak, you must state your name and title for the record. Second, we must be careful not to speak over one another so that everyone who is listening can hear what is being said and we have a clear record. For this reason, when it comes time for commission members to comment and ask questions about a particular agenda item before any action is taken, and then to vote on an agenda item, our planner, Maureen Giusti, will call the roll when necessary. Also, this meeting is being recorded and recording will be posted on the town's website. I am now going to ask that Maureen take attendance by calling the roll.
Williamson,
Present.
Herb Watson,
Present, if I can push my button. Present.
Donald Forcash,
Present.
Lorraine Stubb,
Present.
Pam Pethigo, alternate. And alternate Andra Millard asked to be excused, and alternate Amy Pressure asked to be excused. So you have a quorum of 4.
Okay. And seeing as nobody's waiting online, we don't have an audience of citizens. So we'll go right to the first public hearing, which is HDC 2022-07, request of Eric J. Boswell to replace garage door on barn with a carriage house style garage door at 858 Worthington Bridge. So, Mr. Boswell, we ask that you go over to the podium with the microphone and explain what you're going to do.
Well, I came during the lockdown, we came before the commission when we bought the house in November last year. The previous owner had put, well, it wasn't even the previous owner, it was just a tenant, had just put a door onto the barn, which we were informed at the time of the sale that it was that was not conforming. So the commission had granted us time to settle in and find a door and come before you to propose another door that was more suited to the to a barn style. So what we're proposing is the door that's on the top in the photo there, which would have the handles and the hinges, and then boards that would resemble the vertical panels that are on the barn itself, but it'd still be a steel roll-up door, which is needed for security of the room.
Okay, I know we had sort of discussed this before. Do members have any questions?
Yeah, but I just, so where there's an, and it's just an ignorance question.
Okay, oh, you weren't on, I don't think you were on the commission back when.
I was not, no. So that's, I'll plead ignorance for that reason. Where there's an opportunity in general to take something that is not conforming and bring it closer to conforming, and I'm thinking of steel construction here. Is there a precedent or an understanding there? And Eric, I'm not disagreeing. I think it's a tremendous improvement. But I personally have not experienced this type of situation where an original probably would be wooden. And there might be reasons why that wouldn't be a good idea. I understand that. But is there a precedent for improving, making it closer to its original character and not necessarily matching it?
Okay, well, I think the problem we have is that we don't have pictures of any original door there. And it was just an open door in everybody's memory. And then that tenant went and we just put up any door without telling the owner he was doing that. Do you remember that? But we have allowed steel doors before because they're more durable. And it's hard to say what would, when you don't have pictures of what was there before, it's hard to.
And that makes sense. That it wasn't, honestly, it wasn't intended to be a
Yeah.
suggestion. It's just a case
Yeah.
of I hadn't experienced this before.
Oh,
I'm not
oh.
sure what the policy.
No, it's a good question.
Okay, very good. That makes sense.
And I know at the time, because that door was done without a permit or anything. And then the new owners had said they didn't like the door anyhow, and they wanted to replace it with something a little bit more appropriate. So thank you for that. Any more questions? Or- Okay, so this is where I make a motion to close the public hearing. Maureen, no. Do I have a motion to close the public hearing?
I'll make a motion to close the public hearing.
Do I have a second?
I'll second. I'll second.
Okay, so what do we think?
I think it's fine.
Seems pretty straightforward to me.
If I may just procedurally wise, if one of you can make the motion to approve. And then you can have your discussion about approving it,
Okay.
and then we vote on it, and then.
I'm
somebody
still
second.
getting used to it.
I know, it's one of those, and that's counterintuitive in my opinion, that you don't just start the discussion, but yeah, in order to open up the discussion,
Okay,
then we should make a motion.
I'll make a motion.
We second it.
second.
I'll second that.
Okay. So now we. Everybody agree?
Seems pretty straightforward. And all lumps there, appearance. And yeah, I'm on early.
It's kind of hard at this point to say, you know, you can't have an overhead door, you have to put on hinged carriage wooden doors.
Mm.
We aren't ready to, I don't think we're ready to do that. I mean, if you were making a perfect restoration on a barn, have carriage doors that are hinged on the side, or you would have sliders that would be go on tracks on the top.
External traction.
Right. And they're not very secure, and I don't think we want to go there. I think our Powers has the same door that's on the barn now. Things garage.
I mean, it's hard to go there because there's no evidence of that being there before. So we're trying to have the best solution for now. Okay. So we take a vote now. Okay.
We would ask all in favor.
What,
All in favor.
is everybody in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye as well.
Aye.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for coming, and you get the certificate in the mail.
In the mail, yeah.
Okay,
Good
thank you. Okay, second on the agenda is HDC 2022-08. Request of Carol Wader to repair sidewalk and steps in front of the house at 877 Worthington Bridge. Hi, Carol. Carol was the chair of the commission for a long time.
Okay, you hear me through this? Or you better this way?
Yeah, I have a hard time hearing you ask.
Sorry, I'm just getting over something, so I tried to share. Okay, my name is Carol Wader and I'm from 877 Worthington Ridge. And I'm here to talk about my COA for repairing my sidewalk and my front steps. Several years ago, I had a snow removal person who was very liberal with salt and on my sidewalk. And as he was doing it, I didn't realize what he was doing was he was ruining the foundation of my sidewalk. So as the winter went on, there was more and more and more salt under the sidewalk. And so when everything started melting, then people were walking on the sidewalk and the sidewalk was like you were in a fun house. So that it was just like mush underneath the sidewalk and it was slate stones. So I figured maybe a little hardening over the summer, everything would get back to normal. But then as the seasons changed, the condition continued. So I then had to determine, well, Mike and I had to determine how we were going to replace it. So we got somebody in to come in and remove the slate stones and then remove the underground foundation for the sidewalk and then replace the slate stones. Fortunately, when they did that, they broke several of the stones and they didn't do it right. They didn't do it accurately. And so they took the sidewalk, which was wider, and then brought it closer in. And then the stones that were perfectly smooth, they caused it to be bumpy. So that somebody who was handicapped and trying to come into our house then wasn't able to. So then, fortunately, the people who were able to walk properly on it were the ones who complained to me the most. So then
You have tenants?
no, these are just friends and family.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. They're the ones who complain the most.
You didn't fall, did you, Mike?
No, I fell actually next door at,
Gagliardi's
Oh,
house, so then I had we looked again for somebody to come in and replace the sidewalk completely, because there was no way to do it. And so what you have before you is I don't actually have the specs for the pavers. The pavers are the same color as what the slate was. And then what we found out is from the B&K masonry is that the steps to the house were not the proper size as what's the word? As per code to allow access into the house. What's that?
the flat part also was not up to the current code. It was too narrow. and
Oh, it's too
steep.
narrow for the steps. For people who have big feet, they were not wide enough. So we had other things to correct with the entry into the house, and the cement too was wearing away from the house. So then there was I think gonna be an ant community developing there as well. So So we had to fix that. So when we, did that, can you go back one? Oh, there you are. No, you can stop right there.
I thought I had the color one, that's what I was looking for, the color one, because I thought we re-scanned it.
Yeah, okay, that's it. So right there is, the picture, I don't know, are you seeing her picture? Oh, you got it over there too. All right. So that's what we ultimately, ended up putting in to replace what we have. So the, stairway and the, landing platform of the stairway that's a granite top to the stairs. And then, it's pavers, I guess, some kind of shaped pavers that face the stairs. But they're now according to code, they're the 7 inches. So that it's the proper code and the width is the correct code. And then the, pavers are, as I said, they're the color of the slate. And it's, the sidewalk is now 4 feet wide. So it's plenty wide enough for
What's the
somebody.
current code?
Pardon?
Current code says that it should be at least 40 inches.
To be code and to allow proper access into our house. So that's pretty much what I think I could explain. If anybody has any questions.
You mentioned something about, the railings were wrought iron or something before, and you're going to replace them? But I don't see any railings.
Yeah, no, we haven't, we kind of got, I was down with pneumonia and other things.
Oh,
And now, unfortunately, my mother's passed, and so we've got one thing after another to kind of like deal with, so.
yeah.
The railings kind of fall to the back of the list. But we're intending to try to replace the railings with plank railings. They were wrought iron railings and they weren't able to be put back in because they had to saw them off to get them off. So we're just kind of like starting from square one to try to find them. We got the name of the person that our masonry man gave us. We said should be able to give us what we need. So that's where we're going, kind of like for like with the railings. And I think I wrote it on the COA somewhere.
Just did you believe the railings were original with the house? Have you run them out?
No, it's one little story from the house. That's not the original front door to the house. The door, there was no door on the west side of the house. The original front door to the house was on the south side of the house,
Where the carport.
where the carport is. And so we have no actual pictures to that. We just know that when we had the house resided, that there was actually a, you could see where the windows were that they covered over and where the doorway was that they covered over with the shingles. So what I'd like to do one of these days, which I haven't done in 40 years, is go to the library and see if they have any pictures of the house, the original house.
I asked because this is a little off topic. Apologize if it is, but the railings on our house, we're on really good as well.
Oh, okay.
Too. We believe the original brought on the rail. Very heavy, very rustable as well. And to remove those, I actually had to take a concrete drilling bit,
Oh,
drill around it, because it was also embedded right through the bluestone. Originally, I don't know how they accomplished that, but I managed to salvage the railings, and then I had them, some welding was necessary, and then I had them sandblasted immediately, powder coated. So
Yeah.
hopefully they're good for another 100 years.
yeah.
And I had to use a setting concrete, a polymer-based concrete, specifically for that type of thing. Because the holes, obviously, when it was done, were quite a bit larger than the railings. But I managed to get the entire railings out.
Okay, yeah,
I felt pretty good, but obviously they weren't original.
yeah, no, they weren't original. So see, this is.
Oh, shoot, I'm sorry.
Oh.
Hopefully,
Maybe I'll just leave your speakers on. Just leave your speakers on all of it.
So if you see on the picture that where the car is right there, if you kept going down the driveway there, that's where the front door was originally to the house. Oh, okay.
that's unfortunate.
Because the camera jumps.
Oh,
So, yeah.
Google.
yeah. But that's where the front door would be, and, yeah, it'd be nice to recreate it, but as you guys all know from everybody who comes before here, nothing's, reasonable to do anything on these houses. It'd be fun, but that's not gonna happen.
I just wanted to interject some background into this because obviously the work was already done. And then Amy had noticed it was going on. And then I talked to you, and you were on the commission for a very long time. And you said you had never heard any hearings, COAs or
Yeah,
stairs and sidewalks. Or just stairs, or
it
there
was
was some confusion.
Yeah, it wasn't that there was nothing that spoke to the, doing this in the regs. It said, when I went through them, that I saw that, and I knew that we already had the precedent set for putting pavers in, because there's several sidewalks with pavers in the district. And I had no other choice with my slate was destroyed, you know.
So I just wanted to explain why this would happen, you know, you weren't
Oh, yeah.
intentionally trying to get away with something.
You know, I'm not trying to get away with something,
Uh,
this was my second.
But I know Maureen and I kind of researched and I talked to Mary Dunn in the state, and it's their feeling that because porch landings or, you know, landings like that are attached to the building, that they're incorporated. And so last meeting, we talked a little bit about making that clear in our regs. In our Q and A, but I just wanted people to understand how that happened. And I thank you for coming in.
Wayne, with respect to the railings, and it sounds like technically Carol would have to come back when it's time to replace the railings. And I was wondering if Carol could describe in advance what you're going to do for railings. Maybe we could combine that with this proposal and avoid the need for Carol to come back.
Would I have to come back if it's like for like? It's like for like, I wouldn't have to come back.
It sounds like the prior like though was
Well,
original, at least the way you described it.
It wasn't original but it was existing. So if it's existing, then you're doing like for like.
So in the COA, should we mention the railing
Somebody's sitting
being
here.
similar?
They're blurred.
No, are they there? Are they there now?
It looks like you're a Democrat though, 'cause
The application is for repair of sidewalk and steps, so I think that's general enough to include railing that would normally be on a step, especially since code.
Okay.
I'm not sure with the 4 steps, 1, 2, 3, whether, you know, a railing is actually required at that height, but that's the number that those
Oh,
require,
yeah,
that is the number that requires it. I know there's it's either 3 or 4, you need the
I think we
railing.
should have a railing.
So I think if you wanted to pull that in, it would be part of what you look at when you look at.
You're saying even without changing the wording, if you look at the
Without
wording
changing
as
the
it
wording.
is.
Yeah, because it's part of sidewalks and steps need railings, like that's.
So do we need to say and railings like for like or something?
Well, in your approval, I would include it in your, or rather in your motion.
Okay.
I don't want to pretend you're approving, but. But I did pull up this picture so that you could see what's there for the railings. It's a little difficult to see at this scale. Not very focused, but that's what was there as of, I believe this is 2019 year.
Does anybody have questions for Carol? Any questions, guys, for Carol?
Just a suggestion, do you like those railings? Do you still have them, even though they were having, cut them off?
Yeah, what I gotta figure out is if you well, you can't see it, along that sidewalk, there was a metal little grating that was in the ground to kind of hold the grass back and things like that. And I know that I didn't realize it at the time, that the contractor threw it at the back of my property into the woods. You know, kind of like where I kind of recycling all the leaves and everything. So I'm gonna go back there and see whether or not the railing is back there. And maybe he was able to do what you suggested, and when he got it out of the cement. And so I'm gonna see what it.
Even if not, only because that, just from the photograph, to the extent you can tell in the photograph, that's a lot heavier than you'll see at the big box stores. They have really become very light in gauge.
Yeah.
And if you like them, it would be, even if it was cut off, I worked with the weld shop I worked with over in East Berlin. They could add a piece on, finish it off, you'd never know it was cut. If you like what was there and wanted to salvage that.
Well, I do know that those, we never did anything with those. I don't even think we ever painted them.
No, they got painted.
They got painted, so
Every
maybe
time we
one.
painted the house.
Oh, okay, so, but, you know, there was never any kind of repair.
Yes, it looks like they have the nice little ornate twist at the
Yeah.
end too, which you won't find that today without probably paying big bucks.
Yeah,
That's good point.
yeah. I'll have them down there and take a look. And see. If they got trash with the other stuff.
So I would suggest that, yeah. Once you close the hearing, like you move to a motion that you include the like railings in the motion, and then, should she proceed with a different design, that would then come back.
Mike, do you have anything to say?
Guys also?
It's not,
So do I have a motion to close the public hearing?
I'll make a motion to close.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Do what to make a motion?
Motion to approve. That was you're asking for, whether we actually started with a motion to approve. This would be,
All right, you have to make, oh,
No, you just closed the hearing. Now you're
Just closed the
making
hearing. so you have to make a motion to approve the COA, and you could state to include like for like with the railings with there.
okay, so, but I think we corrected the policy, we made a motion to approve at the beginning.
And that was the last application. And this application, you opened the public hearing. The public hearing was just closed. And once you close the public hearing, then someone makes a motion to approve. You then have a discussion about the approval.
Internally to the.
And then- And right. and all of it.
I'll run it eventually, thank you.
That's fine.
I apologize to the public.
Can someone repeat to me? Because I cheat sheet with who made the motion? Do you have that?
Yeah, so I'll make a motion to approve with the addition of a statement. Is that right? And the statement would refer to a like for like replacement.
Okay, do I have a second?
I'll second.
Okay. So discussion. Okay with this.
Discussion.
Say, everybody's okay. So we have a vote. We're all concurring. We don't have any more questions.
So then they go.
Okay, so, all those in favor?
All right.
Aye. Okay.
Thank you. I didn't want to shoot you. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Carol and Mike, for coming in. And I'm sorry about everything you've been through.
Okay,
Be
good.
well. Okay, on to our third COA, HDC 2022-09, request of John Casso for new egress window and shutters on the front of the house at 192 Sunset Lane. You're on.
Good evening. What I'm looking to do is the center of my house, I attached a picture with my documentation. Right now I have a closet window, which is a pretty small window in the center of my house. So right now I'm doing a second floor renovation, which is basically changing the layout of my second floor. Instead of doing an addition on my house, which would have cost $1,000, I now am renovating my inside of my house to make the fourth bedroom. So within that, I now have to get up to code with a bigger window. So I attached the measurements of the window, I think it's 36 by 90, which is up to code for an egress window in case a fire happens, they can vacate the window. It will match my existing windows that have all the lines to look colonial from, olden times. I will have black shutters, which are identical to what I have right now, as well as the cap on top, which we talked about last meeting, which was a piece you guys were looking for to just at least make it look historic. So that piece as well is on order as well. So all of it will tie in together with the existing look of the house.
The window, is it significantly taller than the existing windows you have on both sides?
It's exactly the same size.
Okay, you said 90 inches, those windows aren't 90 inches.
Whatever the measurements, I'm not sure exactly what the measurements are.
The same size, so it'll bring the house into balance.
Correct. Yeah. Correct. It will be to code, so obviously when fire happens.
When I read your COA, I was confused because I didn't know what
Egress window,
egress window was, so it's like a fire escape window.
it's essentially, the bedroom technically has to have a window where you can escape from a fire
So you jump out the window onto the.
under the roof.
Onto the roof.
That's the worst case scenario, yes.
The windows are, the term is rescue and ventilation.
Yep.
Ventilation getting smoke, toxic products, combustion out, rescue more for the firefighters rescuing you out the window.
Mhm.
We tend to discourage people from jumping out windows, even on the second floor. If you miss the landing and land on your head, you're not going, the outcome will be poor. So the idea is that the window needs to be a minimum square inches and dimensional so that a firefighter can enter through and drag you out.
Bill is a fire marshal.
Perfect. I'll be up to code.
Something in the middle that it comes in handy.
Yeah, so the window will be enough for a firefighter to get in,
Yes.
if need be, yes.
So the material of this window is the same as the
Correct.
other window?
Yeah, there'll still be the vinyl, we'll still have the lines inside, so it'll be identical to what's there, like for like. The look will not change whatsoever. Same material on the shutters, shutters are vinyl, same exact material.
Questions? Or?
No.
Okay, do I have a motion to close the hearing?
I'll make a motion.
I'll second.
All those in favor? Aye. Okay, so do I have a motion to approve?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Did you start your solar yet?
Solar's installed, but now I'm gonna get Eversource to actually come out and install the meter.
Oh, okay, I haven't driven by the house, I haven't seen it.
Yeah, so the panels are all set, they installed it right away, it's just now unfortunately Eversource is just 4, 5, 6 weeks out to put the meter in. So I'm at their mercy unfortunately.
John, what did you have to give up that was behind the little window? Closet or bathroom? Closet.
Walk-in closet,
Oh,
yeah. So I
So you don't get a quarter bit of rent, right?
Exactly, so fortunately, I had my daughter had a walk-in closet, I had a walk-in closet, they were bumped up against each other. So within that, I was able to get a good 100 square feet. And I had a living closet, over 100 square feet, I gained just from those 3 combined. And I just put 2 closets in my bedroom, his and hers. The room was a big bedroom, so it actually worked out pretty well. So if someone doesn't like it, they can convert it back, or they can make it an office. So it actually worked out pretty good.
To Herb's point, I think the street view will be improved probably
Yeah.
by having a same
I
section.
never really liked the small window when I first bought the house, and I don't know why you would do that, but now it'll just be conformed where it's one size across the whole entire second floor, which will look better. So, yeah. Thank you.
thank you.
Have a good night.
Okay,
Now, the other is gone. have to approve that house for the historic district, that house is awful for the historic district. The windows are Victorian, there's no trim on the window. Vinyl shutters in the historic district, the garage stands forward of the house. Everything is wrong. How did that ever get through the historic district when they built it? It's horrible. Right.
Well, I think they made a lot of allowances for newer houses. You know, I can remember this is one of the first meetings I was ever involved with. And they came back, the original plan was not even as like this, it was worse. Yeah, and
Vertical siding and,
we
Wow.
added a lot of embellishments to it.
The windows are side by side, I mean, that's Victorian, if anything.
Well,
And garage in front of the house with a roof halfway across the house,
yeah.
that's so.
Yeah, a lot of, I mean, they come to you with a plan already and with a house that hasn't been on a particular site, you know, it's difficult. I was like a newbie back then, so I didn't.
Right, you're hard.
It's a learning experience. Okay, so on to approval of minutes, and we have to add. The agenda only had the August 1st minutes, but we do have July, and I thought at the time. It didn't get approved last time because we needed both, three of us, me, Herb, and Amy. But Maureen then found out that lacking like 3 quorum, it can be a majority when it applies to minutes. So Herb, you and I are gonna approve the July minutes.
Okay,
Okay, do you remember them?
I thought they were fantastic. Absolutely wonderful.
Okay, so do we have a motion to approve?
I'll make a motion to approve the minute.
Okay, and I'll second it. And so we all approve it, so July is done. Okay, so then we have August, which I think all was for.
Did one of you vote for that? You did.
Yes. Oh, I don't know if we voted to get into the agenda. Nobody's gonna complain. Okay, so August minutes. Anybody remember these? Any problems? I printed out a copy for me. Yeah, when Marla would send these out, did she send the final
Went to
draft
goes
to everybody?
The final draft goes to everyone when,
Okay, so,
once she
I got
sends it to you and I to edit, and then she sends it once we.
so everybody gets it, so that's their chance to look them over.
Yes.
Okay, so do I have a motion to approve the August minutes?
I'll make a motion to approve the August minutes.
I'll second.
Okay, Bill seconds, all those approved, aye. Okay, well, that's fine. Okay, so on to other business, I have written down a bunch of things, but 983 has the town hall.
Yes,
Uh,
and I thought that you had, in the emails, I thought maybe you had met with someone, or had you gotten an update from the circuit rider?
The situation is the circuit rider is like to come look at it with us and offer suggestions, but the homeowner has, when we tried to arrange this, I mean, she wants us to look at it and help her with this, but her mother and stepfather are very sick in Florida. I think one is in hospice and the other one has to go into a home. And she has been down there since, right when I talked to her, she was leaving to go down there and she thought she'd be back in August. But that hasn't happened because she's stuck there trying to clean out and sell the house. And so she thought she'd be back later in September. So I'll keep following up with her. But until she gets back, we really can't get in there.
And someone in town hall had told me there was a dumpster out front. I haven't been
Oh,
by
really?
there, but
I live across
I
the
thought they
street.
might have the wrong,
No,
I thought they
no,
might have been
they're cooking a
describing
dumpster,
wrong property is what I
that's
thought
possible.
might have been happening, that they were telling me there was.
It's also-
dumpsters somewhere else on the ridge.
The street view is that there is definitely a, or there has been a dumpster, but I can't speak for behind the house, so if they had simply got the location wrong, if it's behind the house, that's possible.
Lorraine and I went looking for my cat behind there last month.
The reason you were back there. You're gonna do something about that cat.
Yeah.
Gonna get hurt.
It was horrible. There's a couple of abandoned cars, a lot Jeep in a car. There's a storage building with the roof falling in, attached to the back of the town hall. And the brush and the trees make it impassable. And you've got vegetation growing up the side of the building that's tearing some of the Victorian trim off the overhang. It's pretty bad. Of course, winter's coming, so I guess it's better to do the brush removal when the weather's cooler, when it's 95 degrees and noon, but shouldn't really wait too long for something.
Before she left, she said her son was going to take care of all the brush. He was gonna get a dumpster and he was gonna cut down all the brush. But there's trees there. And there's a dead tree. I don't know if it's right on the property line, but the house next door might own it, but I would think if he knew he owned it, he's like very conscientious and I think he would want it down. So maybe the Brzezowski's own it, but it's a very huge dead tree.
So from the zoning perspective, we can't do anything about dead trees and branches and, things like that.
No, I think your point is if the fall is gonna do some severe damage.
Oh, it's
Yeah.
dead, it's upright dead.
Yeah, I would
Oh,
fall
I'm
on
sorry,
it.
I
It would
meant
fall-
it had fallen.
No, it would
It's-
fall on the
I
building.
misunderstood.
It's dead and decaying and it's standing and it's leaning severely toward.
Again, it's a
Town
personal
hall building.
property issue with private owners. With that regard, I can't order so much.
And on-
It's their liability, if
So-
their insurance doesn't make them do it, it's their liability, it's not something the town can interject in unless it's a street tree. But we'll add it to the bulk of the things wrong with the property.
And I
It's
know
the
Herb
overgrown.
had composed that letter to the
Right.
town manager, and I don't know if you probably mentioned brush in there and trees, I can't.
Yeah.
Overgrown.
But I know on other blighted properties, the town has forced them to clean up the grounds, like with overgrown grass and
Yes,
weeds and
overgrown
like-
is a thing, but we can't order someone to take down a tree. That's not part of zoning.
so
So
some of these are weed trees. that are
the
like-
weeds are a
Yeah.
different matter. The reason I put the update on here is because when I had gotten a report of the dumpster or in the area, and I had also thought that you had visited. Right, so I guess the update is that no, the Kuznetskis are still not doing anything, and then I guess we'll commence with orders, because as of last week, or last meeting. You were reaching out to her as well as the circuit rider to coordinate a visit in the month. There hasn't been a visit,
Mhm.
so. We'll proceed with further enforcement, however, it doesn't sound like we'll get very far if she's not local right now.
Well, the building's not her name, the building in the son's name. So, I mean, if you want to enforce.
It goes
you would-
to whoever the owner is.
It's
It
smart.
goes to the owner of the
So,
property. So,
At least I think I'm quite sure it's in his name, not her name.
That's her husband.
Oh, is it?
Yeah,
I was gonna say, I thought it was.
yeah, and he's not in good health. I think that's why she's handling everything. But should we be sending that letter to the town manager?
You had led me to believe at the last meeting that you were hoping we could get through this past month, some cooperation, and then you were going to determine whether you decided to proceed with the letter or we'll proceed with enforcement. But we'll also, follow your direction.
Well, do we wanna give, saying like another couple weeks, like later September, and if she's not back here yet, so we can do anything? Tell her that a letter is going to the town manager. I did tell her we were discussing whitelist. And she was concerned about that because of potential fees. At least in conversation with me, it sounds like she's just overwhelmed and she wants,
It's in the name of this, I'm sorry, it's in the name Mark.
I believe that's her husband. He was the son he had inherited from, I call him the grandfather and grandmother.
Have you met him? Martin,
Yeah, I met
how
him,
old would you say? Because the individual I talked to was probably in his 40s.
this guy was
The
old,
son of his son.
this guy is 70s.
Oh, so yeah, clearly, no, the individual.
Because we talked to him when they came, I think it's it was before COVID. The stairway that goes up to what they have for apartment upstairs was condemned by the town.
No, guy, a little bigger than me, maybe. Okay.
Maybe that's,
Yeah, maybe.
The guy that came to our meeting with us.
he came to the meeting? I don't think the Personowskis have been here.
Well, no, the meeting for the stairways.
Oh, we met them on site, right?
No, they came to the meeting. At least yeah, they both came to the meeting.
Yeah, I don't remember that. I remember going out to meet with them on the site to look at it. And he was saying he had all that molding still saved, like that was handmade molding or something that he was gonna reuse, and he had all these plans and everything. And then I guess what the town said was okay for them temporarily anyhow not to repair it because they could, the family
There's
family
another
occupies
egress.
the upstairs apartment and they exit through the downstairs, so there's like a way to get out. But I think what happened, like physically, he's not well. And he just couldn't do it, so they just, it's at a stalemate. Yeah. I don't know. So, I mean, do we want to wait till she gets back, give her one last chance and say, we can't wait any longer on this, and,
I you will give it 2 or 3 weeks,
okay.
and then.
We can potentially, given enough staff time, write a enforcement order that would hopefully give her the drive to take some action, hire somebody to do some of the work or something, and then it would be a possibility of forward action. I have to do that before the whitelist is, before we proceed with the whitelist anyway. And, there has to be the zoning enforcement action without saying materials or conditions. So, we can start with that letter, but then to give that deadline timeline.
There's still,
Unless you don't want.
along with everything else, there's still all the broken windows, and there's even some open windows.
Again, those are difficult to enforce except for people like this, so.
Okay. Well, so I'll touch base with her in a couple more weeks. And just tell her, we're going to proceed with some action. Okay. Yeah, what she's going through, but they've had years to do something on this. So the other property I wanted to mention tonight, that came up since our last meeting. I think you all know that East Berlin United Methodist Church had a fire in December. And I've been talking to Tim Sigmund, who is a church member, and they have a fundraising thing going on to raise funds, but they did get the insurance money. But the insurance money will only pay to restore the building back to what it was. It won't bring it to code. And I guess whenever you're doing something like that, then you're forced to comply with codes. So they need extra money for that. But in the meantime, what happened, they're a small congregation now, so they're very active in the community and they do a lot of good things. The Bishop of New York had told them that he wanted to take the insurance money and disband the church and not let them rebuild it. So, Maureen, you know Tim from planning and zoning. I don't know if it's come up there or anything, but he argued something. The lot it's on that you couldn't rebuild anything, that they didn't take down the church.
I haven't ever looked into the lot size and everything else, but it is, I believe, a residential zone.
So I think there's a parish house on it, but for some reason, he was saying they wouldn't be able to build a house on it if they were looking to sell it. And
May not be large enough, or they might not be able to build a second house. If it has one
Yeah,
house, it's
maybe
not
that was-
two family,
maybe
So
that was
it's
his
a single.
issue.
it's probably a single.
Yeah. And the church building has a signed Tiffany window that is worth a lot of money. Of course, the bishop in New York is looking to sell that. So the local congregation is very upset about all this. So they reached out to the Historical Society, and Sally Kelly Andre and I wrote letters to the bishop about the history of the building and its importance. And even though they don't have a historic district there, we tried our best to advocate for that building.
Good thing to,
And
whether it'll be successful is another question. But
yeah, and I wrote kind of a tough letter, and I was saying to Tim, like, well, is this gonna be involving to the bishop or something? He said, no, I've already said some weird things. So they were supposed to have had a meeting a couple of Thursdays ago, but the bishop canceled it, so I don't know what that means. He's reconsidering it, but I also pointed out there are funds available through the State Preservation Office that are targeted towards historic churches for not major construction things, but to repaint things, reconstruct things, things that it might be to help bring it to code or whatever, and if they should look into that. Of course, they're not huge amounts of grants, like maybe 25,000, but it could be something we should look into. So I don't know what's gonna happen, but it'd be sad to see that little church go.
just as a fighter and anything but an expert, I have never heard of a situation where the insurance will only pay for recovery to prior condition. I mean, I've had a little bit of experience, and it's always a given that you can't, there's no such thing as bringing it to a non-compliant. In other words, if it had non-tube wiring, just as an example, the cost to install non-tube wiring is roughly the same or maybe even more expensive.
Well, I'm sure they wouldn't be doing that.
No, my point is that if the insurance company would cover it for the cost of non-tube wiring, I don't see why that would be different than the cost of a modern wiring system.
Does it have something to do with if they don't have replacement value? I'm not a property insurance person, I don't know how.
I don't know, it just sounds a little funny because no one can construct to a non-new construction or a major renovation. You can't construct to a non-conforming.
And there's insurance for the loss, so the house structure might be valued at $200,000. as materials, cost of materials increase, the cost to replace that might be more than the actual value of the building.
All right, that I can understand.
So you can have insurance, and this is something that some homeowners miss out on or wreck, but there's insurance for the value and there's insurance for replacement. It's not always the same.
So understand, I think of contents while being in that category.
It's what
Replacement
the
versus
actual
construction.
structure itself.
So it sounds like the church was probably simply underinsured. That's this, it sounds a little different than saying they would pay for restoration to
Well, to
prior
bring it
code,
back
but not
to
to
what it was before the fire.
Yeah, it doesn't change. It just, I never heard of that before in those terms. You know, anyway. It would be easier and simpler to say, if the place was underinsured. So we can't afford to bring it back completely. Anyway, it doesn't make a difference to the issue.
Okay, the other thing, a couple of things we talked about, well, one thing we talked about last time was the issue with the solar, and Herb and I were gonna look into what other historic district commissions do, and Herb did a lot more of that legwork than I did. Do you want to report back?
When I talked to I tried to get in touch with 4 towns, Weathersfield, Windsor, Glastonbury, and Vernon. Vernon, because they have a pretty active historic district and they have a pretty good chairperson, I think so. I've only heard back from Glastonbury and from Windsor. Glastonbury is pretty much in the same position we are. They've only had 1 application for solar panels, and that was 10 years ago. And because they've had so little requests, they haven't thought about it too much yet. And their chair wasn't even familiar with the rather strong wording of the state requirement that we kind of bend over backwards to accommodate people that want to put solar panels on their historic houses. And she kind of said, well, most of our historic district is shady, so we haven't had many applications. So that's Glastonbury.
We'll plant more trees.
Yeah.
That's great.
Windsor, on the other hand, they're a little ahead of us. They've had 3 applications in the last 5 years. And the last one was at their last meeting. I don't know if that was the driving force behind it, but they're thinking ahead and they have written guidelines now. They preface their guidelines by saying the Historic District Commission strongly supports renewable resources and solar panel. And they go on with their guidelines, which say, yeah, I didn't give Bill one.
Want me to read
The top is the words from the state, and the second is the regular, please, Grant.
Okay, this is Windsor's guidelines for solar panels. When solar panels are to be mounted on the roof, they should be installed on rear slopes or other locations not easily visible from the public way. Panels should be installed flat and not alter the slope of the roof. If possible, solar panels should be positioned behind existing architectural features such as dormers and chimneys. The colors of the panels and mounting equipment should be compatible in color to the roof. The removal of historic materials or alteration of features is highly discouraged when installing solar panels. Freestanding solar panels should be installed in locations that minimize visibility from the public way. If panels may be visible from the public way, they should be screened with materials found elsewhere in the district, such as fencing or vegetation of suitable scale for the district setting.
So they really support solar panel.
As long as nobody can see them.
As long as they're on the back of the house.
I support them just as much, and I would recommend that we adopt guidelines. But that doesn't have to be decided tonight.
So yeah, we just add a little bit to that, more anecdotal. So my wife and I did have a chance to drive through Weathersfield's historic district.
Oh, I
The
didn't.
old main street's about a mile long.
Did you see any? I didn't see it.
There were, and we took actually a slow drive up and a slow drive back to turn around and come back. And none were visible. And we looked along sides to it. If there was a line of sight from the road, we took advantage of that line of sight. We saw zero. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean there may have been no applications. Evidently, Blackberry's only had one. But anecdotally, it would seem that somewhere in the mix, they're discouraging it, whether it's official or not. So I pulled up their statutes. I guess that would be the right term for Weathersfield. Town regulations. They read more or less identical to the state regulation, which is pretty wishy-washy, but maybe it tends to be on the side of we should let solar panels. That seems to be what it's saying.
And Winter doesn't go against that, it just, more protective than maybe other people would be. I think we should air out Windsor's side.
I would agree.
I don't think global warming is going to hinge on whether historic districts have solar panels on their house or not.
Just the opposing argument to that was, it takes a village, everybody's got to do a little bit, and it adds up to a lot. I'm not arguing with you or about this.
Right.
That would be an argument for that.
That would be an argument, but
Okay. Well, it's a balance, right?
It's something we have to be somewhat prepared for because, when we have the house, your meeting house come, that was the first one ever. And I think we were so cognizant of the state statute, like, it implies that you have to have some drastically appealing argument against and to prove that it's going to adversely affect the whole district if you allow it. And time, we kind of thought like, well, it's that way back. Are people going to be looking at it that much? Do we want to get in a fight over this? So we allowed it. But
Well, the key words in the state statute are substantially impairing a historic district. I don't know what that means. There's no rule that goes with that.
it's kind of vague. It's like,
and that's why the Windsor guidelines still fit.
Yes.
It's pretty easy to say you start sticking a solar panel on the meeting house. It's going to affect the historic nature of the district. The Congregational Church or our house on the bridge.
So another way to look at it is similar to the way we looked at vinyl fencing. And so if you look at one home, you can say, well, the whole district's not going to, but you have to step back and you have to say, no, you want to know the effect on the district of that policy? Picture every home with solar panels facing the street directly. That's what you're doing. You believe that would not substantially impair the historic character? Of course, it sure would. So I think whatever the rationale and decision is, it needs to be based on the larger picture, not the fact that one or two homes. One per village.
I'm scrolling through this Weathersfield.
oh, you're looking, you're spying on.
Yes, I saw one, but as I expressed my opinion last time. I feel that panels on the front of the building, looking at the road, it's rather like taking Mona Lisa picture of the nose ring and changing great era. It completely, no, but that's not, it just occurred to me.
I got the visual that goes with
So I
it.
was trying to compare.
It just strikes me as seriously, if you seriously damage the historic appearance of a home in a historic district, you're affecting the whole district. You can say it's just one home, but you're affecting the whole district. And there are alternatives now, they can put them on the ground, but behind the house, you can put them on, as this mentions, on the reverse slope of the roof, so that they're not visible from the street. They are gonna seriously restrict the installation, and that's just something we have to be cognizant of. Is that if we adopt something like this, there could be a serious pushback from people who want them. Particularly since the systems are still heavily subsidized, so there's a little cost to the homeowner. It's an easy thing to want to get, and if you're not terribly fond of the historic district to begin with, it's not a concern of yours.
Because we do have people that don't necessarily value their historic home. You know, we have other people that would, no way would they ever want one on their home because they value the historic look, and we have other people that wouldn't care, right?
So our job is to protect the historic
Yeah.
district, isn't it?
Mhm.
It's not to restore.
Mhm. So is this something like we should put in our regs, or would it be like in the Q&A, kind of elaborating on it, or?
Oh,
So people realize
Well,
like
go
you're
there.
likely to get turned down if you're on the front.
how about the federal recommendations? We talked about that at all, maybe I'm just forgetting them. I mean, we know what the state.
I think the state usually takes their cue from the National Park Service and most things.
Yeah, and the National Park Service will allow a lot of historic areas. They're adopting some restrictions. Right now, if you're reading things, whether on federal, state, or local level, as to which is more important, solar panels are far more important to most people, most jurisdictions than the preservation of historic property.
So getting back on the, how do we want to handle this? Like, do we want something a little bit more specific, like this Windsor thing in our regs? And can we change our regs to be specific, or would that be like more in the Q&A where we elaborate more?
I'm gonna read that, I'm thoroughly gonna have like time to think about it and look at it, but it sounds, they adopted it as part of the regulation. Is that where it is in theirs, which is usually that's how you have teeth to what you do.
Yeah, so we just put it
If
in.
you put it in your recommendations, then people don't have to listen to the recommendation.
There's no enforcement capability.
There's, sometimes with design standards in general, we strongly encourage people to do such and such in design guidelines, but we really have to adopt them as part of a regulation in order to have teeth.
And they do give them out.
And it depends on, the applicant. There are some applicants that would be very cooperative and they don't want to do something against the spirit of a town or a community, and then there are other applicants that are, that know they can get an incentive and, it's their costs and their,
It's true, and historic homes are generally not the least expensive homes.
he touched his microphone. That's what.
That sounds like an earthquake.
Yeah, it's
Wow, I know
That's
where
the
the is supposed to be on. Windsor does give them option or how, if you will, putting it up. The structure they mentioned, freestanding solar panels. Install locations of minimize visibility if they have to be visible from public way, screened with materials found elsewhere in the district, fencing, vegetation, suitable scale.
So we also, in the zoning regulations, don't allow for ground mount solar panels in residential zones. Ground mounted panels are not allowed in residential zones, according to our.
Why is that?
The way those regulations were adopted, probably 8 years ago or so.
Scratch that.
That
Well,
doesn't mean that we haven't got some
yeah.
diaries of people who have spoken about coming in and asking for an amendment to that.
Yeah, because they do have, in 8 years, they progress greatly from just panels on an angle on the ground to ones that are freestanding, open up rather like a flower. They can track and they don't, they spin to face the sun.
Oh, I saw one of those at the lavender farm. That was pretty cool. Have you been there? It kind of opens with the sun. That's really cool.
I mean, that's why I said, I would write that down, yeah, we're not going there, because maybe the town needs to look at their current policy also.
You know, so we can't have a conflict, you wouldn't want it to recommend a conflicting regulation.
Yeah,
that
exactly.
we know is contrary to another regulation that exists. Now, in some towns, zoning office wouldn't have had anything to do with the historic district, and you would adopt conflicting rules. You have the same staff. We know the rules conflict. Or that would conflict. If you were to amend the regulations, it would be, the basic process for amending regulations in general is you have to notice that what the regulation is you're changing. You, have a public hearing on changing regulations and, open to the public, and you notice it in the paper. That said, I don't know if there are other specifics to regulation changes to the historic district regulations. Because there are some specific statutes and rules regarding historic districts. So I imagine change to your regulations might have to go for review at the state level. Zoning regulations we sent to our regional agency, you know, was the state plan of development. I don't know, the historic district, I haven't had that. Need to research that. Yeah, it was done a few years, the last time they were readopted was 2016, were the last amendments. The historic
I think
district.
it was since actually Robin was on the commission then, and you suggested, I forget what the change was, with some wording change, and so we just
It
voted.
was just a public hearing.
No, not even a public hearing. There was some confusion about the wording.
I suspect, because all of these are public hearings, I suspect.
Yeah.
You would have had to have a public hearing, just like.
Oh, we probably,
And
maybe we
you probably
posted it.
didn't know it was in the newspaper, but that's what our
Oh,
office does,
okay.
we run these ads.
And nobody showed up, maybe.
We, you know, we have a whole process we do in the office, and I'm confident.
Well, that's true.
With regard to it, which is why I knew you had that regulation. That wasn't your staff, but I knew there was paperwork going on with regard to the regulation change.
As far as, I was gonna ask you, because this whole issue that came up with the waiters, front landing not clearly being in our regs. So our regs, it talks about when you're building a new house and things to consider. And it said, you know, it says including paving, fences, lighting fixtures, signs, and relationship to open space, talking about the new building. Also mentions materials, texture, architectural details, roof shapes and projections, and parentheses, porches, Ls, etc. And when I talked to Mary Dunn, it was her opinion that because the stairs are attached to the main building, that they're in our purview. So I know Bill had suggested something, and that whatever our wording was, saying not exclusive to or something, which I'm kind of
Including but not
open
limited to,
or not limited to.
that's the language, including but not limited to.
Because we could put in like
Boilerplate.
porch steps, but then there'll be another thing that comes up that we didn't think to put in there. I mean, fortunately, what she did looks nice, and she was willing to come in after the fact for the record to do a COA, but somebody else could come and do something horrible and refuse to even do it. So I don't know if we want to change wording or not. Or we'll just go with those like, not exclusive, which sounds so vague, you would.
Well, I mean, that's done purposely because you can't foresee everything that could come forward that you need to deal with. And if you're very specific in your language, and something new comes up that's not mentioned in the language, you're stuck. So you say including but not limited to, and then the following things. So you're saying this is the things we're looking at, but we're not limiting us to that. In case there's something that we're not aware of, a new technology for solar panels comes up for that will find from the front of the house, you know, but we're stuck with the language that says you can't have the solar panels on the front of the house. So you say including but not limited to, it's a way of giving you an out and also allowing you to capture things that might happen in the future or issues, technologies, materials for building that
So maybe like
are wise in the future, you can bring those in.
this doesn't say, but not limited to, so maybe when it says including, it should say, but not limited to.
Yes. So, that sounds like the best solution.
Which is like a just tiny little change.
So last month we discussed putting that as part of the directions on the website, as far as explaining. If we're looking, I don't have the regulations in front of me, I didn't bring up that notebook tonight, I'm sorry. But if you wanna look at, I would suggest that if you're going to be looking at updating regulations, that we look for you do a reasonable review to see if there's any other adjustments and those get done at the same time, so that we have one new application of the regulations. The older regulations kept reappearing long after the readoption in 2016, where people would come into me with, this is what the regulations say, and I go, no, this is what the regulations say. And it was happening for several years because those are still out there now. We do have the advantage now of a website being far more popular, and people do go and look at a website to see, get the most current information. They don't count on what's in their file cabinet as much anymore.
That's why we put the revision number down the bottom of the page, so you can show, no, that's an older revision.
Exactly, but it is one of those things that can be problematic if you piecemeal update. If you do an update that's a little more beefy, so for instance, solar and the walkways. You know, we bundle. And do more than one thing at a time. I don't know if anybody has anything else that, you know, you want to think about for maybe a month and
So
decide
it's something.
what else.
To the committee membership, are there any changes that
Yeah.
you'd like to see to the regulations for the district?
Maybe have people reread
Additions or
this before the next meeting. Because you might notice other things you think are ambiguous or something that we should tweak the wording.
That was Windsor's.
Yeah, we got a copy for you.
Yeah, I'll actually need it for the record. I need it regardless. That's sure. Right.
And I just had one other thing to bring up, which I meant to bring up last time, but I forgot about it. Those of you that live on a ridge, did you notice buses a lot? Are they still happening?
Just at the railway between,
Yeah,
I think the driver for that was the railway was up the.
yeah, okay, I figured that out, but
Today, it's back in service as of today.
really,
I thought it was going for months.
Well, I don't know how long, how far back it goes, but no, it was a big celebration apparently at this stage.
well, I knew that was gonna happen because it was in the news that they were working on that line and that people would have to get off in Berlin, be bused to New Haven, I guess, or wherever.
Really?
But why did they have to go down Worthington Ridge? Like, why? It's just as easy to get out of Turnpike.
Didn't notice the
Public
sign
road.
that said no commercial traffic.
Is there a sign?
Yeah, but it gets violated all the time.
Or traffic or something?
Yeah, well, part of the problem is the trucks have difficulty making turns onto and off it. And
a truck one time going from Worthington Ridge onto Hudson, and they could not make the turn without running over my vehicle. And they were slowing down but not stopping, so I had to put my car in reverse and back up. But both those streets are not through truck traffic.
Well, part of the challenge is if you come from one of the non-historic locations.
Yeah, but
when you get to the sign.
The truckers are supposed to say, it's not the historic district sign, there are signs as you go to make the turn.
No, yeah, I'm aware of that. I looked at it, Bill, and I think there's a couple of cases where by the time you see the sign, if you're driving a large rig, you're not backing up. So you're committed. Believe it or not, I also think Google Maps might have something to do with that. I'm not sure that the historic district is recognized, or even no trucks allowed is even recognized in Google Maps. I don't think there's a way to indicate that. I may be wrong. Do you know? Did anybody know?
I don't know.
I don't remember ever seeing that in any Google Maps driving that I've done. Maybe the Merritt Parkway is an exception. Maybe it's identified that way.
As a parkway, so by the designation of being a parkway, Google makes it.
Yeah.
As it's a parkway.
My guess is a number of locations where if you're using Google Maps, Worthington Ridge ends up being their determined shortest route.
I wonder if it's something like, who is behind this? Is it this DOT or the Amtrak?
I believe those were the state rail, the Hartford.
Maybe they don't even realize that bus drivers are going through this.
I'm certain of this. I mean, it was on the news this morning, as a matter of fact. It's done, and they were celebrating speeches at the Capitol and that type of thing. Now,
Well, I feel bad we weren't on top of this because people mentioned it to me and then I get distracted with something and I didn't follow through with it, but maybe we could have rerouted them or could, let DOT know that that's inappropriate and there's no reason why they can't just connect down. It's easy to go that way as it is to like make the sharp right turn onto Worthington Ridge and terrorize all the homeowners.
yeah. On the other issue of just truck traffic in general, I've seriously considered taking photographs of where all the signs are, writing a letter to the town, making recommendations on how I could eliminate much of the currently illegal truck traffic. I just haven't.
Yeah.
I guess I haven't felt serious enough about it to actually do
Well,
anything.
I'll mention that you guys have concerns to our director of public works, but the street signage for the traffic control is the police commission. Just so you know, the proper venue.
Oh, that's interesting.
And
Okay.
that's a police
Uh,
police commission issue as far as traffic control goes. But again, I'll also mention it to Mike, because of course, the director of public works, because they obviously have to work hand in hand with a lot of things, and we all pretty much work closely. But the things the police commission does are, well, they're not in our way. They're not day to day, we don't see them with the copy machine and the coffee pot and everything else, so, they're somewhere there in another part, and then it's commission itself. So, but I'll mention that was a concern. I had not gotten any phone calls on it, which the zoning office generally gets calls about.
everything.
Yeah, we're kind of a fallback, us in public works, so public works might have gotten some calls. But we are, we're two departments that are fallback departments, and oftentimes when we get calls, we'll say, that's a policeman. We don't want to bother the police department, so they call us.
Oh, they
instead. So we get them before
love
the
to
police department usually does anyhow, so us, the town clerk and public works tend to get.
I tell you, I
If
drove
you're
down
not
that
the right person, you
that
know who to
short
send
section
it to.
of Middletown Road. There was work being done out like this was a year ago, and the work was substantial enough that they had cops on the street redirecting traffic. And the vehicle in front of me was a cement truck, a concrete truck. The vehicle behind me was a truck. And that's one of the no trucks allowed roads. So the cop is directing traffic. And so I actually pulled over And I started to have not an angry conversation, but a terse conversation. I said, you're driving truck, this is a no trucks road, and you're just waving them right on. And it was a she officer, said, I don't know what you're talking about. And I could see me pulled over, was blocking traffic a little bit. She had a job to do, and I just said, never mind. And I drove off. But I mean, there's a real awareness issue amongst, I guess, our police department. All.
I did talk to, I forget who it was, traffic. Police are in charge of traffic. or the
We have a
commissioner.
traffic officer.
And they said that if the truck has business in town, they're allowed to go through there. It's just not like through trucks that are just taking a shortcut and they have no business in town. That's what they told me.
Again, I'll talk to the department heads and see what we can, if there's, the right venue, so that the concerns
But I
go to
know-
the right people.
I know the homeowners.
I know I'm not the right person, but I'll help you find out who the right person is.
Well,
Okay.
And I'll help get the message to them.
Great, and I'm absolutely serious. Mike and I talked about writing a letter, actually including some photographs where I think the signage could be better. This type of thing. We just haven't done it, and I'm very willing to do that.
And, I just want to reiterate that when each of your commissions, you're on, the commissions, the other members of the public are on. You live in different parts of town, so you experience different things, and you have meetings that are public hearings. So that you can get perspective from the affected parties. So, just keep that in mind, that like a member of the audience can come speak to you, and I don't think any of you would take exception to a neighbor or another person coming and, asking a question or talking, we have public hearings. Not all the commissions have public hearings, but, some do, and some have public comment times, and some have, a staff person with which you send those day-to-day items through, so. Citizens like you.
I just had two other things.
I have a couple.
Oh, okay.
When you're done.
Okay, so Bill, you walked in, did you understand why Robin's here?
I am so sorry. Robin.
I wasn't gonna ask, I just figured she shows up from time to time, Thanks, honey.
I was. Yeah.
Marlo informed Maureen and I that she has a conflict and she's gonna have to give us up. So, but she recruited Robin
I
to
inherited
be the
you.
secretary, which
Oh,
is perfect, because Robin knows our lingo. I think.
It's not a good sign. I thought you were auditing Maureen.
I'm just a reporter. I'm ready to finish.
The only thing I was gonna say, but, those of you who know Susan skiing really well, her brother died, September 1st, and there's calling hours tomorrow night at the Berlin Memorial. I didn't see it in the paper and Andrew. So that's all I had. You have a couple.
I have a couple of things. The first thing is kind of a positive. I got an email from Preservation Connecticut, and it's about two programs they're having on Old Olmsted landscaping. And as well as some other things in their email that I thought might be of interest to any or all of you. And so I'm just gonna pass these out, but these are two programs. One of them is October 1st in Waterbury, and the other one is in South Windsor, Manchester, on September 23rd. Those are the two homestead programs. I find landscapes.
Oh, I thought you said homestead.
Homestead, I'm sorry.
The name is
Homestead.
landscape.
Yes, landscaper, and I find his work
Yeah.
amazing, and this is, I guess, his foundation and his association's work as well as Frederick Law, but I thought that would be of interest, so I wanted to, it's timely, I got it in my inbox this morning, and I said, I'm happy in this. Thank you. So there it is. The other thing we have, and I'm planning on, I'm working with the town engineer as well as we sent a message to the traffic officer, but we have an application that's going to the siting council, which does cell towers. Or PURA, I'm sorry, I think this one's going to PURA, which is the Public Utilities Regulatory Control. And it's an application for an install on the telephone pole that's at the corner of Hudson Street and Worthington Ridge. And
so what?
cell, additional cell tower stuff. I don't know how to better describe it. So they'll be putting something, this is a mock-up of what it would look like. This would be the telephone pole, they'll add girth to it as far as width and height to the cell tower.
So it's like,
Now-
sell something.
And make it a cell site, yes, at that intersection. Now, the schemes, avenues would have gotten a butter's letter. Yeah, it's right, this is a mock-up showing an example. This is not the location. The location is in this one. Oh, I'm sorry, let me make sure I'm securing my screen so that it comes up on the tape. So it's, you guys can see it.
You're right on the corner.
Yeah, there's an existing utility pole right on the corner right here. It's the northwest corner. And that's where they would be at.
Not on the southwest.
So, right,
I believe it's the northwest.
right across the
This
street
one.
from Susan Steen's house.
No, I think it's at Susan's. I think it's the one on the, well, I'm sure we've been discussing the northwest.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's this one.
It's on the edge, that's her property.
This is her property.
Oh, okay, they're putting it on her property,
Well, it's in the right of way,
in the right of way,
but we have,
that open lot.
to be replaced, so it's all one lot, actually, that's all her single,
Hmm.
I think it's all one single property. But right there.
There's a carriage
So-
factory there.
So from the historic district perspective, and so this all just happened at the end of last week, so not a lot of research time. But one of the things that town can do is write a letter to PURA in response within a certain period of time, looking into whether or not, the town from the public works standpoint, because it's the town right of way. I found the state regulations that said the state can comment, it's in the state right of way. I haven't found the statute yet that directs the town how to comment in the town right of way. And whether, what concerns, historic district may have, if any, with modifications to the pole.
How tall is it?
I think I just saw 144 feet.
What?
That's huge.
Really?
Did you see that?
Yeah, keep scrolling.
Oh, so they did highlight, this might be because it's in a butter, I'm not sure, they highlighted that lot as well.
But when the part where they showed the two poles, they did give you specifications.
That was way about the size was, okay, I'm sorry. Because I had a number of emails, and some of them had some
Right
things
there,
attached.
round elevation.
That's the elevation around.
And so it doesn't answer the question, how tall?
Try to keep
Wouldn't that
looking.
be 144?
Something the ground elevation,
Yeah.
144 feet.
That's the height of the ground.
That's where, that's the elevation
Oh,
of
That's not.
the earth, and that.
Oh,
location. Yes, yeah,
I interpreted it incorrectly.
I think,
Yes, that would be rather dramatic.
So is this the size for regular pole or taller?
no, they'll be adding quite a bit of height to it, which is covered in our zoning regulations as far as cell towers adding, so, or rather adding height. Because they're allowed to They're, I don't want to miss one.
Oh, it's taller, but not significantly taller, because they're showing
No,
the
I
height of
think
the
it's
average.
significant.
It'll be guided as well.
The highest appurtenance on the existing utility pole is 24 feet.
Let me find that.
13. Okay, proposed Southern Pine Class 2 40-foot utility pole that at 6 feet in the ground. So it will be 40 feet at 6 feet, so 34 feet tall, 34 feet above ground.
So does that mean that the base that you kind of high level and everything is still fine?
No, it's adding.
Well, they're replacing the pole altogether.
Okay, so. I would think it would be metal.
No, scroll up, it says pine. Proposed, scroll down a bit. Proposed Southern Pine Class 2 40-foot utility pole embedded in 6 feet of ground to replace existing pole. So it'll be 34 feet from the ground to the top of the pole. Then I believe they're putting a antenna on top of the pole, so that should add some.
They're also adding around the pole.
Yeah.
So there'll be pine with something around it.
Yeah, but that, it won't be like those cell phone towers with like.
It's gonna be a monopole, but
Load center.
So I have to go. there.
they're probably selecting it because of the height of the ridge.
Can I scroll down or do you want to keep looking at that page?
Can you just scroll up a little bit to see note 3 on the left? Okay. So yeah, so to the top of the pole will be the antenna 35 inches high, so another 3 feet, so it'll be just under 40 feet.
I was gonna say, it says 37.8 over here.
Top of the highest other. So not quite 4 stories.
Okay.
Great section. There you go.
And the fluorescent lights in your house will go on the road.
Are the lights on this?
No, I mean in the house. No, they're not enough lights.
So I'm just looking, you have specific comments for me to incorporate or that you wanted to note as concerns for me to look into. As we determine whether there's, what staff's comments on it.
I think you're
Right now, we have some concerns because of its, did you want me to stop? I'm sorry, were you reading something? Okay. Whether we had some, here's the location of it. You can see the location right here.
Oh, good, it'll be right next to the
Yeah, yes,
memorial plaque.
Memorial marker immediately adjacent. We thought that might be something that the historic district had something to say about. As well as its proximity to the corner and to the edge of pavement and whether or not that's
That is a bit of an
really
issue,
a
because
very safe
the other side,
location.
those poles are literally at the curb, including the guy wires for it. If you so
And
much
this one has
as sneeze
guy wires, so.
at the curb, you will be on the guy wires. So there really isn't much clearance there.
We haven't heard back from our traffic officer yet as to whether they have any concerns or comments. Again, we're really digging into this on Friday morning, so
Yeah,
not a lot of time to go very far with it yet, before your meeting. But I suspect we're going to have some staff comments to it, but certainly I'm not familiar with that marker, but it is, I do know that it's a historic marker.
It's for the
Marks of spring.
town pump. And right around the corner is the Emma Willard.
yes.
I can't even think of that we're seeing them in a residential neighborhood.
This is, these are kind of newer installs that are starting to happen in lots of different places. As the cell companies come up with
5G.
innovations and 5G and ways to do, you know, instead of a monster pool on the top of 100 Park, you know, they're starting to do these smaller installs all or sporadic locations.
Well, at least in Hebron, the town of Marlboro, and to entertain proposals, cell tower, it's a lot of objections. And finally decorated it to look like a tree. It's almost a tourist attraction. It's the one up on, you're driving on Route 2, you can see it. It's hideous in its appearance. Oh, it's you would have been better off just leaving it as a valley. It was not a very good job of disguising it to look like a tree.
We have had some presentations on the way that they disguise as trees and some of the more effective installations and some
I'd
of
like to
the
suggest
less effective.
that they consider putting something like that. Steeple. Congregational church. Some better altitude. Church, some revenue.
And some congregational. Somebody told me that.
Well, I don't know, that's just.
In their Google.
Yeah.
I know churches, I know, but churches do that,
Maybe they just don't even realize it's a church there with better altitude.
You don't, Bill, does the wooden structure around it have any,
Generally, no,
negative effect?
generally not.
I think churches are all pretty tough shape financially, COVID and other things. If there's a revenue stream there, they would probably jump on it.
Well, and the cell company may not realize, they're just thinking about telephone poles, find me a telephone pole high on the ridge. Okay, here's one, where it's right down the street, higher altitude.
I know the church is looking for funds to. Because there are grants, like I said, with the state, we have to match, and you have to pay for the whole thing up front, so. They make it difficult, so they've been looking for funds to repaint and restore their steeple.
So
Maybe,
$100,000 project, probably that, maybe on our.
I don't know what
That's
the
you, I-
estimate is.
I'm sorry, I wonder if there's some arrangement if they hold you to details.
Could be.
Certainly, it might be cheaper for them to rent poles here and there.
I don't know, but. strange. So I zoomed in on what they mocked up on that pole as far as
Yeah, I mean,
other apparatus on the pole.
they're just gonna tap into the service line.
But they're adding, like I said, they're
Yeah.
adding this pearl, the wide center on the utility pole.
Yeah, but that's something
Going
that
on, and I believe it comes all the way down to the ground,
it certainly
the
looks like
distance,
mock up.
yeah, so.
And I
It
also
may end
have
up
to
changing
add,
the sight line,
you know, they have to get guy wires too.
the existing 24-foot, and this is the new height. So you can, to me, that's more, that was the picture I was looking for.
Yeah.
It showed you the change in the height.
Is that something that we can, alert, like, homeowners there too, because.
So they had to notify the.
Well, you're saying like
state
the-
property. They had to, they sent. a
I know,
notice to
but like,
that
the
property.
people in the neighborhood, like maybe Robin won't like it, maybe you won't like it, you guys, and you
So-
didn't get notified.
So from what I read, it's only the adjacent property owner. was the one, so
And so the
they
rest
did each side of the street, I believe, were the two that got notified. Different regulations are written in different manners. That's the way that regulation must be written. That's what came with their application. Or not their application. We get a copy of the application or a notification that they're sending an application to Pura.
But I know what's happened in the past, because the fire department was expanding their cell phone thing, and because it's close to the historic district, they had written us a letter asking if we cared to comment, if we had any concerns, and I know there's been other cell phone things in town that letters went to the historical society because they wanted to give them an option to.
So I don't know where
But I haven't heard it, this is the first I've heard of this one.
well, we just got the letter,
Mhm.
so, I haven't gotten a letter addressed to the Historic District Commission. I don't know if we were Susan would get that letter as chair, she was still the chair a couple months ago, you know. So I don't know, as far as that goes, where if they had to notify the district or if they would have with their application, this is our copy of them notifying the town that they're making an application. And that's how it came to our attention. So they had to notify the mayor, and copy the zoning office. They copied the zoning office and make sure that the engineering department, public works gets that copy as well. So we've had the internal conversation. The notice we got included the butters letters, which were to Skinny property, and I believe it's the one across Hudson Street, but I'm not sure there, I believe there was a second letter in there, I resonate which property it was, because that was what I was focused on. The cell towers in town that had to go for siting, when we sited a new tower, those also have to notify the adjacent property owners, because they're applying to the planning and zoning commission for a site. So they have to go as well, and that, you know, those are the abutters notices that P and Z requires, which is anyone within 500 feet. So that's a much larger problem. So it may be what regulations are telling them that they have to. And how the historic district fits in, that's what I'm seeking out now. I immediately said, wait a minute, that's in the historic district.
But I don't know if it's inappropriate for us as a commission to, like, a mass alert, like, people like, do you want to comment on this? Or
I don't think that would be.
what people consider that, like, you know, that we're forming a public opinion or something, or. I don't know, I'm
I
just
think with
thinking,
the commission, you can have a concern.
That, yellow house, I think it's 939, has a big window tower out behind the house. As far as I know, it's still there.
That's
It's
kinda
been
low.
10 or 20 years ago. I guess they used to have a window on top of it, and pump water somewhere. I remember seeing it, quite tall.
then your house is higher than that.
You know what?
You can't, you have so much land in the back, like, you put it way back there.
Just my gut feel is pretty nondescript, I mean, it doesn't look much worse than a.
They were on a rent, I got
It's pretty bad, but.
I'm sorry.
but they want to rent it, I got a pool.
I've got 65 radio antenna.
Neighbors.
That's what I would say, again, if they wanted to do just to the pole, it's adjacent to our house, I don't think it. Doesn't look a lot different than a telephone pole, which looks pretty bad.
We'll get used to it.
I think the real concern is after police department,
Like the telephone poles, proximity, unless you're looking road.
That was, and that was the height and the proximity to the intersection.
Yeah.
And road where then you add to it, but there's a marker there. Outlets, plays in.
if there are any more guy work.
I mean, they do know it's the historic district, so.
I don't know, I don't know.
They don't even know that.
Never seen a lot,
Yeah.
I don't know what they know. I mean, just
They don't know.
sent in a letter, we don't know.
They've got a pole, they want to use it, they.
Well. I
Sure,
feel
that's the right molding,
the right molding. Are we ready to adjourn?
I make a motion, we adjourn.
I'll give a second. Okay, all those in favor?
Oh,
Thank you, everybody.